Welcome back. Welcome to week 3. So this week we're going to be learning about how to get to know your patrons and their environment. And for this week we're going to look at different methods for assessing patron needs. So patron needs assessment tools, different technologies, different methods, and ways to better understand student information seeking behaviors. You're going to read some interesting articles and book chapters that kind of give you a window into ways of doing this and ways that libraries have done it. You're also going to look at ways to scan the academic environment. This is critical if you want to actually embed library services into the academic environment. We're going to look at ways to better understand the curriculum in a specific subject area, curriculum mapping being a great example of that. And also looking at the costs and benefits of each approach, because some are very easy to do and some take a lot of effort. Some yield okay data and some yield a whole lot of really great data. So we're going to look at that as well, especially in your readings. So why do you need to get to know your patrons? I mean, the answer seems fairly simple, and yet most libraries do not actually do a great deal of user assessment. Um, you know, and you can get it right eventually, even if you don't know your users. Eventually you might, if you're lucky, you'll hit the target, but there are going to be a lot of times when you won't. And we spend a lot of times in libraries trying things, piloting things that really don't meet needs, tossing them, trying something else, and eventually maybe we're lucky and we get it right, but we waste a lot of time not getting it right. Um, and the only way to really get into the user's workflow and their is to really understand their information seeking behaviors. We can't do it otherwise. We have to know how they actually work. Um, and we often rely on our own intuition to make decisions in libraries. We look into a crystal ball and think, oh yeah, I totally know how my patrons use X, because maybe I worked with one patron and I saw what they did, or this is what I do, so I'm just making assumptions. We some often think that we are our patrons and that our patrons are like us, when librarians are definitely a different kind of beast. Um, my friend Roy Tennant once said, librarians like to search, users like to find, and I think that's one of the key differences between us. And we have to better understand our patrons because we're not them at all. So we should start by asking some questions, and these are questions you should ask anytime you're doing any sort of assessment project. Start with, what do I actually need to know? I've seen so many badly designed assessment tools that are bad simply because they didn't ask those questions. They just asked, they created a survey with lots of questions, but it wasn't really targeted to what information they want to have. So think about, at the end of this work, what do I hope to find out from my users? And then design whatever you need based on that. Also look at what sources of information are already easily at your disposal. For example, I'm working on a committee right now that across campus that's examining the first year experience. And we're collecting a lot of data that already exists because there's a lot of stuff out there. The National Survey on Student Engagement, looking at our students' scores on that and looking at them versus other institutions. Great, useful, helpful data, and we also do a lot of other assessments that we could lean on. But also thinking about what you can do to get additional info. And how much time you have to get that, because you can do a deep ethnographic study of your users, but not if you need the data in 2 weeks, or if you don't have any resources to get it done in terms of time and money and people. So thinking about what possibilities are out there for getting the information and what your limitations or affordances are is really important. So on that committee that I'm on, we're also interviewing people who are experts in specific parts of the first year experience. They're coming to our meetings and talking to us. We're developing surveys and we're doing interviews and focus groups. Very valuable ways to get information, and they're not super duper time consuming. They work for what we need to be doing. There are lots of great ways to get to know patron needs regarding the library and information. The first is reference desk transactions. When I was creating Library DIY, which, like I said in week 1, is a tool to provide point of need support to our users, I wanted to get a sense of what are the common questions that students have. And we luckily have a system where we keep track of our reference desk statistics. We actually make a note of what we sorry, forgetting the word. We make a note of what the question was and our answer. Not everybody does it, but there's enough information in there to see what the common questions are that people are getting. I also talk to our librarians who are at the reference desk the most to get a sense of what they saw as the really common questions. Website analytics are extremely valuable. You can see how users are using your website, where they're having problems, where things go wrong, where the bounce, where they bounce off the site because maybe things didn't work out. Like we found for some reason with our original widget that we had in Desire to Learn in our learning management system, looking at the stats, a lot of students were clicking on our email a librarian page and then disappearing and then leaving the site. Obviously that wasn't where they wanted to end up being, so we ended up redesigning the widget based on that information. Very, very valuable. Usability testing, surveys, sorry. Surveys are kind of the very common way that we do needs assessments. They're still very useful. They can be very hard to get people to actually fill out. Make them short and sweet, offer really good incentives, and you might have a fighting chance. I'm engaged in a survey right now as part of an ethnographic study that I'm doing of returning students. And we offered like some really awesome prizes like a Kindle Fire and a $100 Amazon gift card to get people to do it. And we are getting a pretty good response rate. Usability testing. I've done this several times in my career, usability testing of a website. And you never really know how your students are going to use a website until you actually watch them use it. It's just incredibly fun to watch. I always enjoy that. And part of what we did in our ethnographic study, I recorded users doing research. I used a screen capture software like what I'm using right now to record this lecture, to record them doing research. And just seeing how they used WorldCat Local was like, oh my God, I had no idea how busy the design was and how that impacted users. I always thought it sucked, but for completely different reasons. So it was really interesting. Obviously, you get already existing studies of students either at your institution or general ones. You can never totally generalize. Looking at a study from EDUCAUSE or something on how students do research, your student population may be different, but it gives you something on which to go. Ethnographic research, which I'm going to talk about in just a second, and also assessment of student work. This summer, I and a team looked at freshman student research papers using a rubric, an information literacy rubric that we developed, and it was so interesting to see where things went wrong in students' research. It gave us some great insights that we were able to take into our instruction work in the next fall. So ethnographic research is very hot in libraries these days, also very time consuming, and I know because I'm doing an ethnographic study and have been engaged in it for about 1.5 years now. We're looking at returning students, so students with a gap in their education, in their formal education, to see what their research needs are, what their research habits are, and how we can help. So an ethnographic study is basically a mixed methods qualitative research study where you use all these different kinds of qualitative research methods to better understand a particular population. So in our case, we filmed users doing research, like I mentioned. We did a survey with a bunch of like qualitative kinds of questions, like what do you do first when you do research? What are you good at? What would you like to improve at? Things like questions like that. We did focus groups. We did research journals along with interviews. And we did photo diaries. And the information we've been getting is so interesting and so illuminating about how our patrons, or specifically our returning students, approach research, what their anxieties are, what stresses they have, and gives us some insights into how we can better serve them. But there are a lot of other really cool ways of doing ethnographic research. There's mapping diaries where users map how they go around campus every day and where they go and what they do. A photo diary, students take pictures using, you usually give them some prompts and they take pictures of those things, like a place where you feel comfortable studying, and you'll see all the different pictures that students take of that, and it's just really fascinating. Um, Field observation where you actually just sit and watch students and take notes on what they're doing. Space design is where you have students actually draw like their ideal library space or even a specific space within the library. And then cognitive maps. And I don't remember exactly what one does with cognitive maps. I think it's like, oh no, I do remember now. Sorry. It's where they walk around, they draw the library from memory, and every 30 seconds they change the color of marker that they're using so you can see what they draw first and what stands out to them in the library. It's a very interesting idea. We really had no influence over space design, so we didn't do a lot of those that really were designed to influence space design. So lots of ways to get to know the university. And the best way is to really just start talking to people. I know when I was new to Portland State, I set up meetings with a lot of faculty members and administrators who I thought could give me useful information on how things work here. Looking at demographic data is always valuable. I was surprised when I came here by how large our returning student population is, how large our transfer student population is. It was very helpful to look at. Read documents from the institution, mission statement, vision statement, strategic plans, any like curriculum reviews, any if there are like reports to accrediting agencies that are available. That kind of stuff is going to tell you so much about the institution. Also, consider looking at already existing studies of students. Like I mentioned before, NSSE, the National Survey of Student Engagement. There are lots of assessment tools, that national ones, that your institution probably already participates in, and that information is going to be extremely valuable in your in getting a picture of the university as a whole. Also, there's a lot of really great ways to get to know the curriculum, and you're going to read some good stuff about curriculum mapping this week. Talking to faculty, if you're the liaison to a specific department, talking to faculty in that area is the way to get in. I'm new to 3 of my liaison areas this fall, and going to faculty meetings and meeting with department chairs is a great way for me to get a sense of what the department's about, what the needs are, and I've had some really good opportunities to talk to faculty. Reading syllabi, I think something that not enough librarians do, but that's really valuable, is to collect syllabi from the departments that you serve and get a sense of what they teach, what resources they use, what kinds of research assignments they're giving. talking to students, if you're able to connect with students, probably you do research consultations, you work with them in class, talk to them, get a sense of what their needs are. And finally, curriculum mapping, really looking at how students progress through the curriculum, what classes are research intensive, where does it make sense to embed information literacy into the curriculum. Like I say here, it's not just a tool for getting to know the curriculum, but also for getting to know the places where information literacy can be embedded. So, as you can imagine, I'm a big fan of ethnographic research, so I definitely wanted to have some readings on that this week, but also I think curriculum mapping is a critical tool for learning more about one's department. So there's some really great readings this week about needs assessments and academic environmental scanning and whatnot. I think you're going to really enjoy it. And once you know your users better, you're going to have a much better chance of actually serving them effectively on the first try rather than continually trying and failing. All right, enjoy your week.